All right, let's jump right in. For a lot of us, cloud governance feels like this big, clunky roadblock, right? Something that just gets in the way of building cool stuff fast. But what if that's all wrong? Today, we're going to talk about how to flip that idea on its head, how to turn security from a blocker into a real advantage that actually helps you move faster, but safely.
And really, this quote hits the nail on the head. Without some solid rules of the road, your AWS environment, which is built for speed and flexibility, can easily turn into a minefield of security problems. It's not a question of if something will get misconfigured, it's a question of when and how bad the damage is going to be.
So this brings us to what's often called the governance gap. And you've probably felt this. It's that tension where the push to innovate and ship features is moving at light speed, but the security and compliance practices are struggling to keep up. And this creates what feels like an impossible choice. You're told you can either move fast and innovate, or you can stay secure and compliant, but you can't have both. The thing is, that's a false choice. Trying to pick one over the other is how you get into trouble. You don't actually have to choose.
Okay, to make this governance gap feel a little more real, let's walk through a story. It's a super common and incredibly costly mistake that happens in the cloud literally every single day. So it almost always starts with something that seems totally harmless. You've got a developer, they're probably under a tight deadline, and they make a small, quick configuration change. Maybe they're just trying to get something to work, just a routine, everyday task. And boom, just like that, that one tiny unintentional tweak has now made an entire S3 bucket, a big chunk of your cloud storage, completely public. The digital front door to your data has just been swung wide open for anyone on the internet to walk through. And that leads to the million-dollar question, right? What was actually in that bucket? Because the answer to that question is everything. It's the difference between a minor oopsie and a full-blown company-ending catastrophe.
And way too often, the answer is, well, it's the keys to the kingdom. We're talking about your customer's personal information, maybe patient health records. It could be your secret sauce, your proprietary source code, or customer credit card numbers, API keys, credentials. Basically, everything an attacker would ever want. And it all started with one simple mistake.
Okay, so now that we've seen just how bad things can get, let's talk about the solution. And it's not about adding more red tape. It's about a total shift in how we think about security. It's an approach called shifting security left.
This breaks it down perfectly. The old way is totally reactive. You wait for an alert, you find a problem, you scramble to fix it after the fact. Security is the team that always says no. The new way, the shift left way, is proactive. You build security in from the start. You prevent problems before they can happen, you automate everything, and security becomes an enabler that helps everyone move faster with confidence.
And the way you do this is with something called guardrails. Now, don't think of these as roadblocks. Think of them like the barriers on the side of a highway. They're not there to stop you from driving. They're there to keep you from accidentally driving off a cliff. They create a safe, paved road for your developers to speed down.
So let's look at our first type of guardrail. And honestly, it's the most powerful one. These are the preventive controls, the things that stop bad stuff from ever happening in the first place.
We're talking about service control policies, or SCPs. These are basically the laws of the land for your entire AWS organization. You set them at the very top, and they define what is and is not allowed, period. It doesn't matter if you're a junior dev or a senior admin, no one can bypass an SCP. It is your ultimate, non-negotiable safety net. And check this out. That whole disaster scenario we just talked about with the public S3 bucket, a simple policy like this makes it physically impossible. This code just denies the specific API call that makes a bucket public. With this in place, a developer can't do it by accident, an attacker can't do it on purpose. The problem is solved before it's even a problem. And it's not just for S3 buckets either. Here's another one. This SCP automatically enforces that all new storage volumes have to be encrypted. If you try to create one that isn't encrypted, the request just fails. See? You're building your security best practices right into the fabric of the platform itself. It's all automatic.
Now, prevention is amazing, but it's only half the story. What about all the stuff that's already running in your accounts? Or for rules that are too complex to just block outright? Well, that's where our second guardrail comes in. This is your detective control, your 24/7 safety net. And that's AWS Config. You can think of this service as a security camera that's always watching every single configuration in your environment.
It records every change, and more importantly, it constantly checks if your resources are following the rules you've set.
And here's how you put it to work. First, you turn it on everywhere. Easy. Second, you apply these pre-built rule sets called conformance packs that check for things like CIS or PCI compliance. But step 3, this is where the magic happens. You set up automated fixes. So let's say a public S3 bucket already existed before you put in that preventative SCP. AWS Config would spot it instantly and could automatically trigger a function to make it private again. No human intervention needed.
Which brings us right back to this main idea. Guardrails are not roadblocks, they are invisible helpers. When you combine the powerful prevention of SCPs with the smart detection and automated response of AWS Config, you create this incredible system where the secure way to do things is just the easy way. Your teams can innovate without fear because they know these helpers have their backs.
So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. When you look at your own cloud environment, is your governance a roadblock that's forcing your teams into that false choice between speed and safety? Or is it a smart system of guardrails that's actually giving them the confidence to go even faster? Because it can absolutely be a true business advantage.